Hello and welcome back to my 2023 Tour Divide coverage. We're now on day 11. Let's go and have a little look and see what's been going on over on the map. So we've had a bit of a truce, I think, at the front now, for the time being at least. So if you remember yesterday, there was about probably an hour and a half gap between Justinas and Ulrich, and it looks like they've kind of ended up together. So they started the day up here. Ulrich was in Sergeant's. Justinas a little bit further down the road, and this is quite a unrelenting sort of section. It's going to start getting quite warm now as they're heading further south and into Del Norte, and then after Del Norte they're crossing over the highest point of the race, which is Indiana Pass, and as you can see they've both stopped together down here, and there is a little lodge called Skyline Lodge, which is kind of on the base. There's actually two passes. So Indiana Pass is high up here, and then there's another little pass before you drop down. And so yeah, it's like a hunting lodge up here in Platoro, as you can see. So I'd imagine that they've stayed there for the night and are having a bit of a resupply before they head on into New Mexico. I think it's certainly a race of attrition at the moment. I've got a lot to cover because quite a lot's been going on. A few moves on the leaderboard, so we'll start at the front and we'll work backwards. So I'll start off with a message from Justinas from yesterday. So let's hear what Justinas had to say. This would have been yesterday morning, probably 7 or 8 a.m. On race time.
Oh my god, dude. Such a low point. I've been struggling so hard. The sleep was terrible because it was kind of stupid, so I couldn't sleep. Tried to ride, kept falling asleep on the bike, kept taking like power naps the roadside. Started bleeding from the nose, but like heavily. Still have no control over it.
So yeah, that's from Justinas. Hopefully you can hear that okay. So he's basically, I think, just had a real low yesterday. So if you remember, he slept 2 hours, whereas Uber slept 4 hours in a hotel in Silverthorne. And I mean, Justinas just pushed it a little bit the night before, and I think it's catching up with him a little bit. I mean, at this stage of the divide, you're kind of not in control of your body anymore. Your energy just comes in weird waves. You could be absolutely dead on your feet 1 minute, and then you can get a meal and you can be absolutely flying the next. And I just think Justinas probably had a real bad low here, and it sounds like he was kind of mentally down as well, which makes a big difference. So yeah, it looks like Ulrich caught him, and then they end up riding sort of a similar pace for the rest of the day. Ulrich posted this on his Instagram, which was actually quite amusing. So this is the two of them hiding under a tree, and it looks like Justinas has just fallen asleep mid-text. I mean, that's the state these guys are in at the moment, and these are the guys at the front. It's the same the whole way through the field. It just catches up with you, and as you can see, it looks like it's getting pretty warm now. So it's another thing to contend with. The big story, I guess, with the front of the race, you may remember Jens was right up there with everyone. He is now, I'll just put a little star on him, he's now effectively taken himself out of the race. So I'll just find the correct story. So yeah, Jens on Roost, hands are fucked. Cannot fight without hands. Will quietly make my way to the Mexican border. Thanks for all the messages. I mean, it's a real shame to see that. For me, Jens was a bit of a dark horse, but he was obviously he was looking after himself, but obviously was maybe not looking after himself as much as we all thought. So he's basically got hand issues. I imagine he's got numb hands. I mean, it happens. I mean, my fingers are still a little bit numb from the Highland Trail race, which was nearly 3 weeks ago. You can just end up pinching your kind of nerve in here, and it makes your fingers go numb. And then if it's bad enough, then you just really can't do anything. So yeah, hopefully Jens is okay, but it looks like he's basically decided that he's not going to kind of push on and race and push the sleep and things like that. He's gonna have a few big nights in hotels. So it looked like he stayed in Salida yesterday, and now he's gone over Marshall Pass, and it looks like he's in Sergeant's in those lodges. This is where Uber stayed yesterday. So as we can see, he's basically just looking after himself a bit. And he's there with Steve Halligan. Again, big ride from Steve Halligan. Brought himself back into it. Peter Craft's there as well. So yeah, 3 of those guys at the moment. So I'd imagine Jens will probably just take it steady tomorrow, take a few days to sort himself out, and then move on from there. So what else has happened? So with Jens backing off, that means Joe Nation is now in 3rd place. Now, I've kind of been backing Joe from the start because I know he's a class bike rider and athlete. And as you can see, he's now in that 3rd position. He's got Indiana Pass between him and Justinus. I can't really see him closing in on those guys. That's probably now an hour or so into Del Norte. There's 3 hours to the top of Indiana, and then probably an hour and a half or so down. So like probably 5 or 6 hours behind. And I imagine he's going to stop in Del Norte as well. But he's done a solid ride, and he's looking pretty strong in 3rd position if he keeps it going as he is. If we look at the race flow, you can kind of see, I don't know whether it's a change in tactic for him or just circumstantial. So he rode through the night yesterday, then stopped in Salida. I've got a bit of social media somewhere. Here we go. Yeah. So same old story. The bikes are getting an absolute hammering at the moment. So he's stopped in Salida for a new BB, fed himself up. I don't know whether he had a sleep or not. He's going to have a new bottom bracket, so his bike's going to be feeling sweet. He's had a bit of a rest there. Definitely a big refuel. So yeah, I don't know whether he slept here or not. So he got there at 4 a.m. And got going again at 11:30. I'd imagine he probably would have slept somewhere until the shops opened, and then sorted his bike out first thing, and then got moving. That's probably kind of, I guess, the logical thing that you would think had happened. And yeah, he's cruising on, and he's looking like he's holding good speed. As you can see here, Ulrich kind of caught Justinus, and they rode the same kind of pace together. So I'd imagine we're going to have a stalemate for the next few days. I don't think it's going to be a case of legs that wins this race now. I think it's going to be a mind game. Are they going to stick together, or are they going to try and race each other? Have they got the energy to race each other? It's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, Joe Nation, solid ride there. Chris Burkhardt, again, he's just been a bit quiet, but he's quietly just going along, and he's up in 4th place. And Stephen Laherick, again, really strong ride to come back from some adversity early on. Jens van Roost, obviously he was way up there. I think we can probably assume that he's going to be dropping backwards a little bit now, which brings everyone else up a little bit. So Steve Halligan, Peter Craft, Lael, Justin Smith. You know, these guys on the back are sort of crawling their way back in. Lael's just doing her steady ride. So yeah, really, really cool to see that race develop. And it just goes to show, I mean, I talked a lot about early on going too hard too early. We did question whether the leaders had gone too hard too early. And yeah, well, saying Jens was probably the sensible one, but he's had his own issues. So, but yeah, some people who were forced to slow down early on are now coming strong into the top 10. And yeah, that's kind of there's still a lot to play for there. I mean, I don't see Ulrich or Justinus being caught as such, but you know, things can happen. Bikes can break, bodies can break, but they're getting close now. So you know, I remember getting here, across the last border into New Mexico. We'll cover the route in a bit more detail on Ride with GPS shortly. But you get the feeling it's kind of like it's nearly done, and it gives you a little bit extra motivation. Further back in the women's race, so we've already covered Lael. She is currently in this little group here. So it looks like everyone is kind of huddled up. There must be some kind of accommodation here. Where are they? Let me just figure out. I'm a bit lost on the map. That's Salida, isn't it? Yeah, so they're kind of in the middle here. Must be camping out somewhere. Ezra Ward-Packard, he's dropped off a little bit. We've got a message from him. So he's actually, I think he's type 1 diabetic. So it makes this kind of feat even more amazing that, you know, that's another thing to manage. Just goes to show that, you know, you're not written off if you've got diabetes or anything like that. But it is another thing you've got to manage. So let's hear what he has to say.
Just a real quick update. Just checked into a motel in Salida. Got a few different things going on. First, blood sugars are just ping-ponging like crazy, which I'm not going to go into detail now because I need to eat and sleep, but causing some issues.
So yeah, having issues with his blood sugar. I guess it's just fatigue. I mean, even if you haven't got something like diabetes, it's it's going to take a massive toll on your body. So yeah, I mean, fair play to him, but I guess sometimes you have to stop and just manage your health and make sure you're okay. So yeah, head over to his Instagram for that full message. My internet's a bit slow today, so it's a bit jumpy. Just a shout out to Holyfat again, as usual, for support with this coverage. Obviously, their bars, their nut butters, really good for these long endurance efforts. So yeah, if you're interested, have a look at their website, and there's a little discount code in the description below. Back to the race. So let's have a little look and see where the rest of the women's field is. So Lael's just past Salida, and further down. So we've had Katja's had her issues. So Katja's still in second place, looking fairly comfortable. But she again, it's just the war of attrition. So a series of stories that came up yesterday. Bottom bracket is basically dead. Seems to be a theme at the moment. I think pretty much most of the leaders have changed their bottom brackets when they stopped in Steamboat. Katja, basically hers collapsed on her, so she had to hitch a lift and found a bike shop to repair her bottom bracket for her, and then get a lift back to where she was. That's totally within the rules. If you hitch out to a town nearby, as long as you get back to the point you left the route, the exact point, you can continue, and that's all within the framework of the rules. Let's have a little hear what she said.
That was crazy roller coaster of emotions. Today my bottom bracket just like blew up. Paddling was super duper lopsided, so I limped my way for 20 miles and 2,000 feet elevation gain to Kremling, where I proceeded to call a bunch of bike shops trying to find the bottom bracket, which they didn't have, but they did have the right bearings, and bearing was the issue. We found out later.
So yeah, sorry, my internet's a little bit slow again today, but yeah, collapsed bearings. So it sounds like she's had a bit of an ordeal. So she's lost a little bit of time, but I think she's in a strong position, in second place there. Lael's at just, let's call it 1,800 miles to round it up. Katja, 1,685. So 115 miles behind. I mean, there'd have to be a disaster for Lael at this point for Katja to close up, but she's still doing a really great, strong ride, and there's a lot of really strong women behind her as well, which just goes to show how well she is doing. Speaking of the chase pack in the women's race, we've got Sasha. She seems to have pulled ahead again a little bit. Hannah Simon, Alexandra Huchin, April Drange, and of course Gail Brown. Now, we heard from Gail Brown yesterday, and she's really had a bit of a flyer the last few days. She's through Steamboat. These women are all on those three passes we discussed yesterday. They've all been kind of mixing up with each other. So if I go to April's Instagram, hopefully I can show you some of the stories. But it looks like she's caught Alexandra Huchin the other night riding single speed. So they all look like they're yo-yoing sort of back and forth. So that's Alexander Huchin, riding at night there, probably just before Brush Mountain Lodge, judging by some further posts. So it looks like they rode together for a little while. Having a great time, as you should be on the Tour Divide if you can. And then sounds like they all converged at Brush Mountain Lodge. A bit of neutralisation for the chase pack in the women's race, and it sounds like Alexandra took off first, followed by April, and then Gail turned up as well. So they all kind of saw each other, and there's Gail heading off as well. So yeah, they got the snow up Sand Pass as well. Again, April and Gail riding together for a little bit, but it looks like they're all kind of toing and froing. and having a great time. So let's just see who's in the lead now. So race clock is saying 10 days, 17 hours, and local time, it's just before 1 a.m. So I suspect they're all going to be camping down for the night soon, just getting over some of these higher passes, and yeah, they'll be into Silverthorn tomorrow, I suspect. So that's what's happening in the race at the moment. Just bodies and bikes are really just being hammered. So yeah, I think it's going to be a case of it was just attrition now. Everyone's just hanging on and just trying to get through this thing. It's going to be interesting to see what happens up front. Ulrich versus Justinus. I'm not sure it's going to be legs. I get the feeling if we look at the leaderboard and the run rest, it looks like Justinus is actually the faster rider. 10.7 miles an hour average speed, Ulrich 10.4, but I mean it's a minimal difference. I mean Ulrich could probably ride away if he wanted to, but it's the mind at this point, the mind of fatigue and energy levels. And yeah, you're 10-11 days into a race now, so hopefully 3 or so days left for them through New Mexico. Let's head over to Ride with GPS and just have a little look and see what the riders have got coming up. So I'll start at Del Norte because that is where they would have been yesterday. Let me just put the points of interest on Ride with GPS. This is Sarah Swallow's excellent map. So Del Norte, then we've got a long pass up Indiana. This is the highest point, just under 4,000 meters. And then it looks like they're all staying at Skyline Lodge, which you can see here is the little purple marker here. So that's where Ulrich and Justinus are currently sitting. If we look at the tracker, you can see here that's there. So tomorrow, or when they wake up and get going again, depending on when you watch this video, they're on this they've done the high point here. So Indiana Pass, it's the high point of the race. It's pretty spectacular. So when I did it in 2019, I stayed in Del Norte and I left at 1 or 2 in the morning. I had kind of an early night. So got to the summit just as the sun was coming up. It's a really spectacular place. As you can see, there's a fair bit of snow up there. The track was clear on the whole, but there was a few drifts on the way down. Not quite sure what conditions are up there for the guys at the moment. Not seeing any video coming out of it at the moment. I'm sure we'll find out in the next couple of days. And obviously the sun came out, and this is what you see. So it's kind of like a bit of a rolling plateau at the top. It's one of those descents where you don't really start going down for a little while. Could be quite muddy, I'd imagine, if it is wet up there, but yeah, spectacular. When you live in the flatlands like I do, when you're up at 4,000 meters on a plateau, it's pretty incredible. And then there was some snowbanks, so I'll just show you what they look like. It's mainly in the shaded areas, kind of where it's north facing a little bit and the sun doesn't get on it so much. Wasn't too major. Obviously I was there really early in the morning, so the snow was really solid, so it was quite easy to walk over. And that's just a consideration you have to make when you're kind of crossing snow in the divide. Early morning it's going to be solid. Later in the day you might just be post-holing, put your feet right down to your knees, and it just makes life very difficult. So that would be this section here, the ridge. There's actually another little pass up before you drop down to where they're staying at Skyline Lodge, and then you've got this long sort of drag down. I just remember this being super rough. Loads of stutter bumps, really quite uncomfortable. It's quite a well driven track, but yeah, it was quite beat up, and I was glad to hit the tarmac at the bottom where you hit La Manga Pass. As you can see, it's denoted here on the map, and this is the last big pass of Colorado. So basically you're climbing up on the road. It's a fairly steep pass, but to be honest, after things like Indiana, it's on tarmac, so it feels quite pleasant really. I've got a video from La Manga, so this would have been just sort of on the summit here. That's Evan Deutsch from 2019. We were kind of riding sort of close together at this point into New Mexico along with Kai. So yeah, nice and smooth, a bit of a treat for tired bodies to be riding on tarmac. And then you're heading into New Mexico. So you cross the border, you basically turn off the road, and the track turns to dirt. You drop down a little bit, and then you find this sign, and this is a very, very welcome sign. You know you're nearly there then. Once you see the New Mexico sign, one more state to go, and the last big push. So through there, so this is where Justinus and Ulrich, and I suspect Joe will probably get to tomorrow. Uplamanga. This Brazos Ridge is up here somewhere. My geography skills are lacking a little bit. My brain wasn't quite functioning fully by this point of the race in 2019, but I'm pretty sure Brazos is in here. It kind of runs parallel to the border. And then you're gradually dropping down again. So you've been at quite high altitude for a while. Gradually drop down. So I suspect, a lot of fatigue and things that these guys are finding at the moment could, it's accumulated fatigue, but there's things like altitude. They've been up at 2,000 meters for the last 2 or 3 days. And that is going to take a toll on your body. So I'm not surprised that they are feeling rough. Hopefully when they drop down, they'll feel better. To Abercuie, there is a gas station there, opens at 7 a.m. And shuts at 10, I believe. So resupply is going to be a little bit tricky. There are a few little options in here, but again, no 24-hour gas stations, so they need to look out for that. And I'd imagine they get there and then they will head through the next section, which again is quite remote. There's not much in the way of water. So yeah, we'll see how they get on tomorrow. One thing to bear in mind is there is a risk of fires. There was a fire report in the Gilar, which is further down, so maybe in the next few days we might see a diversion from the race course. That would mean that they don't qualify for an overall record if they were aiming for that. But it looks like at the moment Mike Cool has got a fairly good gap. His 2016 record and his legacy, it's intact for now. So we'll see if they close up. But I think everyone is just totally nailed now. They're really going to struggle. So it's the Gilar that is on fire alert at the moment. So hopefully it's clear and they can ride through it when we get there. Right, that is enough from me today. Thanks again for watching and for the support. Don't forget to give us a subscribe if you really like this stuff. And yeah. Getting towards the end now. I'm going to do reports past the winners finishing. I've got a few days after I suspect the winner is going to be crowned, and I'll carry on reporting. Hopefully get that lead pack of women, or the chase pack of women, cover all of those guys, and then I'm off racing myself, so I will not be able to do any more reports after that, but we've got another week's worth. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow for day 12.